What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, January 18th, 2017. And yes, my voice is still shot, but I'm actually feeling pretty good right now. So it's just going to take a few more days for my voice to come on back here. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. And Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Quick little program note. Next Tuesday in our third hour, Wayne Madsen will be our on-air guest, talking about evidence of blackmail being used to control both John McCain and Lindsey Graham. And also he's got a new book out about CIA front companies. And you might be amazed to discover how many companies that you hear about all the time are actually fronts for the Central Intelligence Agency. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So anyway, let's get on into it here. Obviously, there is a lot of noise about disruption of the inauguration on Friday, with potentially disruption starting as early as tomorrow. And there's a lot of it. It's obviously well-funded. If you do a Google search on this Disrupt J20 group, they have a lot of professionally produced graphics and videos and so forth and so on. Obviously well-funded, well-organized. And they're basically out there with this claim that they're trying to save the United States from fascism, which is ridiculous because that's what we just got out of. And they're still out there saying they're going to stop the inauguration and prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. Now, that is going to be a little bit tricky because Donald Trump is not required by law to stand up there on the steps of the Capitol building and take the oath of office. He could take the oath of office in a broom closet and he would still be the President of the United States of America. The only way they're going to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president is either burn Washington, D.C. down, and he can still take the oath in, say, for example, New Jersey. He could take the oath on Air Force One. So it's ridiculous. And they're out there saying stop the Trump-Pence regime before it starts. Are they just being crybabies? Or is there something else? Now, Project Veritas has come out with these videos where they're catching these organizers and leaders talking about some very drastic steps, damaging steps. Butyric acid into the ventilation system at one of the venues for the inaugural ball. Chaining the trains to the train station so that that system will not work, so that people can't get to the inauguration. And they're talking blockades, they're talking about just trying to shut the entire city down. Now, it's important to keep something in mind. These planned disruptions in Washington, D.C. are not a genuine popular response to the election of Donald Trump. They are a bought and paid for fake color revolution identical to the ones used by the CIA to bring down legitimate elected governments around the world and replace them with dictatorships, and that is what they're trying to do here. That is very obviously the plan. Now, it's an act of desperation. But there does seem to be indications that at least somewhere, some fevered brain actually thinks that there's a chance they could pull this off. Now, as you know, ads have been surfacing in newspapers all across the country, hiring paid disruptors, paid protesters to fight against Donald Trump. And one of them is called Demand Protest, and they're paying people a monthly retainer of $2,500 on top of the standard $50 per hour you're actually at an event, as long as you participate in at least 6 events. Now, the problem is this group has now been linked to George Soros. That's where the money is coming from. Soros is very unhappy that his globalist dream is starting to evaporate, and he's using all of his money to try and fight back. There are ads for these paid protesters in 24 cities across America right now. And the ads simply say, get paid fighting against Donald Trump. Sounds like incitement to revolution to me. And you have to figure, what the heck is going on here? Because over at the Huffington Post, they've run a story that carries the subheader in bold type, Hillary Clinton is the rightful president-elect of the United States. And the article just goes on and on with charts and graphs about why we should ignore the Electoral College, why we should ignore the rules, and just go with Hillary's claimed lead in the popular vote, ignoring the fact that pro-Hillary election fraud was documented in at least 5 states. 3 million non-citizens voted for Hillary, and they're not supposed to vote, plus however many dead voters and everything else that was going on. And they're still pushing this idea that Hillary Clinton and not Donald Trump should be the president, and now they're talking about inciting a revolution in the streets of America to make that happen. And over at 12160.info, they've got a story saying the rumors of Hillary, the comeback queen, will not go away. There is all kinds of talk and buzz that she still holds out some kind of a hope of grabbing that White House for herself with a coup d'etat. Now, the war of words between Donald Trump and CIA Director John Brennan, it just continues. And Brennan is losing the PR battle here, but he's still going at it. And frankly, what worries me about that, Brennan isn't acting like a man who should be cleaning out his desk at this point. Now, yesterday we had a caller into the show talking about the polonium poisoning of Roger Stone. And I did a little more digging on this matter. It looks to me like this may have been somebody's warning to Donald Trump. We can get at you. We can get rid of you. And I think they chose the polonium because of the links to that assassinated Russian spy, which was blamed on Putin, but more likely done by agents in the West. And by the way, if you're having trouble seeing my website, the children are back at it. They're hacking my server. So Stone is now saying that he was poisoned with polonium. Not enough to kill him, he thinks, and we certainly hope. But it's very, very hard. Now, maybe it's just a big tantrum. Maybe all of this is just a lot of whining and crying and, you know, we didn't get what we want, so we're going to roll around on the ground and kick and scream and set a few fires and so forth and so on. Over at Global Research, they're saying basically this soft coup is already collapsing. The CIA is bluffing. Russia did not hack. They're also reporting on the blackmail of John McCain and Lindsey Graham by the CIA. So this may be why Brennan is acting like he's running the country, because in his mind he thinks he is. But one thing is very clear at this point. Obama seeks to create chaos before Donald Trump takes office. In fact, in a lot of ways, Obama is behaving like a rock star on way too many drugs. He's staying at a hotel while he's doing a concert, and before they check out, they just decide to trash the place just for the heck of it. That's the way Obama is behaving right now. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, Joe Biden is out there making all kinds of speeches, and he's basically blasting the Trump-Putin plan to collapse the liberal international order. They're now openly admitting their goal is a global government, a liberal global government, with liberalism meaning everything is under government control, what bathrooms you can use, what foods you can have, whether or not you can collect rainwater, all of that stuff. And Biden is trying to give globalism the credit for the post-war economic boom in the United States. And that's absolutely not true. The post-World War II economic boom in the United States was based on 2 factors. One, the United States was the only industrial nation whose industrial base hadn't been bombed into rubble. So everybody had to come to the U.S. to buy new tools, new machines, new ball bearings, and so forth. It was a golden age. And the other part, of course, was the fact that the Bretton Woods Agreement required all of the world's financial centers to conduct international trade and banking using U.S. Federal Reserve notes that were either borrowed at interest or acquired by sending manufactured goods and agricultural produce to the United States in exchange for ink and paper. Now, the economy was already starting to fade from the monopoly on industrialism. In fact, our manufacturing went into serious decline, and it was replaced with various scams like the petrodollar. And yes, we did have an economic boom from the tech boom, but that had nothing to do with globalism. That was the technological fallout from the Apollo moon missions. Globalism did not, in fact, have any part to play in the economic history of the second half of the 20th century. But Biden is trying to claim it is. He's trying to say globalism is the only reason we had reasonable lives in the second half of the 20th century. And we have to continue that policy. I mean, they're desperate. Now, right now, today, is an important anniversary. 56 years ago today, Eisenhower, in his farewell address, warned America of the military-industrial complex and the danger of having this immense arms industry with so much wealth and political power that it could, in fact, warp the United States to its own continued economic interests, which is exactly what has happened. Now, today we call it the deep state, but Eisenhower saw it coming, and he did try and warn us, and the adults of 56 years ago should have been paying better attention, because that's what happened. Now, interestingly enough, if you are a fan of Judge Andrew Napolitano, and I am, I'm definitely one, apparently he's been spotted for a second time at the Trump Tower. This has fueled speculation that Donald Trump may be considering Judge Napolitano for a position on the U.S. Supreme Court. At the very least, it suggests that Trump is looking at Napolitano for some kind of a key position within his administration. I think that would be a good thing. Of course, there's always that problem of getting confirmations from an openly hostile Congress. And there's going to basically be a fist fight between Donald Trump and the Congress. And we, the American people, are going to have to stand side by side with President Trump and basically tell the Congress, you go along with these changes, or you're out next election. Because we just got done proving that, yes, in fact, working together, the American people can overcome all the election fraud. And 2 years from now, which is the next election, the midterms elections, we're going to have a different election system. And we've got a president who's going to be fully on board with overhauling and reforming that system and taking it away from the current one, which is clearly designed to facilitate and conceal election fraud, in favor of something where it's going to be a lot harder for politicians like Hillary Clinton to steal primaries and elections. We need that. Now, a little bit of side news. You probably heard yesterday, former President George Herbert Walker Bush went to the hospital, and initially his public spokesman said it was minor, he's responding to medication, he'll be home in a few days. Apparently, he is suffering a severe respiratory problem, and he required a procedure under sedation. And apparently, Barbara Bush has been admitted to the hospital for fatigue and coughing, indicating that whatever George has, Bush may have picked up. And these are elderly people. George is 92, Barbara's 91. And so they may not be doing very... There are some nasty bugs going around, obviously. And I'm sure George and Barbara got all their required vaccinations, so I have no idea why they'd be sick. Now, Ron Paul has issued a warning that freedom of speech is very much under attack in the United States of America by the corporate media, which has lost its monopoly on information flow to the public, and by the government, which is absolutely paralyzed if they cannot lie to you with impunity. Mea maxima culpa. Now, we're starting to see all kinds of polls come out in the corporate media, and a lot of them are directly contradictory, which tells you someplace somebody's lying and fibbing about what's going on. Now, Gallup came out with one poll saying that Obama gets a -9% final grade from the public on various aspects of life in the United States. Did we make progress or did we slide backwards? And the end result is we slid backwards. And Americans say the U.S. gained ground only in 4 of 19 policy domains, held steady on 1, and lost ground on the other 14. But Gallup also has a poll out claiming Obama is the most admired man in America? That doesn't make any sense. Now, over at IntelliHub, they have an article pointing out that corporate media is releasing more and more rigged polls to say Donald Trump is the least respected president coming in, he's the least supported president, he's got a hideously low approval rating. They're trying to smear and discredit him in the corporate media. But remember, these are the same pollsters who said Donald Trump had no chance of winning the nomination, and then after he won the nomination, no chance of winning the election. And they're still out there thrashing around here and hoping that you won't remember only a few months ago when the media was lying about the poll results. Even the Wall Street Journal got into it. They claim they have a Wall Street Journal NBC poll claiming that Donald Trump is the least popular new president in at least a generation. Well, not to be too kind to them, it was the same Wall Street Journal NBC polls that assured us Hillary Clinton was going to win the election in a landslide. These polls are not measuring public feeling. They're trying to manufacture it in the hope that they'll say, oh, 9 out of 10 Americans don't view Trump as legitimate, and they're hoping that you'll go, bah, bah, and just go along with the rest of the flock. But we've kind of outgrown that at this point. The American people have become very skeptical. The American people are tired of being treated like a flock of animals. The American people are, frankly, tired of being treated like morons by the corporate media and the government. And over the decades, it does seem that the constantly growing egos of corporate leaders and politicians, they really do think they're superior because they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal. But the willingness to lie, cheat, steal, and kill doesn't make you a superior human being. It makes you a human being who's willing to lie, cheat, steal, and kill. And that's all it is. Now, the president of CNN is out there screaming that Donald Trump is trying to delegitimize journalism. That's nonsense. CNN delegitimized itself, and apparently the CEO's or the CNN president's ire wasn't all that great because CNN is requesting a press pass to the inaugural ball. Fox News was just having a story out there. As you know, the corporate media is demanding that Donald Trump stop using Twitter. You will go through us. And Donald Trump says, no. I'm going to go on using Twitter because the corporate media is dishonest. And he's absolutely right. And so the corporate media apparently has the attitude, we don't care if we're dishonest and spinning everything. We don't care if we lie. That's our job. You are required to allow us to filter everything that you say to the American people. Remember when the corporate media was twisting around Ahmadinejad's words to make it sound like he wanted to declare war on Israel? Trump doesn't need that kind of inconvenience right now. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And hello, America. Welcome back to our show here. And getting on back to the news, and, well, can't even really call it news anymore. It's your daily dose of propaganda coming out of that corporate media. Now, Judith Miller, who is currently a Fox News contributor, responded to Obama's commuting of Chelsea Manning's prison sentence by tweeting out how many people have died as a result of Manning's leaks. And everybody jumped all over her and just slammed her, and for good reason, because back in 2003, she was a New York Times journalist who cited all of this dodgy, later discredited evidence claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. She was one of the people pushing that lie about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. How many people died because of that lie? 4,400 U.S. troops. 31,000 wounded, some of them permanently crippled. These corporate media journalists have absolutely no shame. I think their consciences have to be surgically removed as a condition for employment. They have to demonstrate a talent of being able to stand there with their hair on fire and report they smell no smoke at all whatsoever. Now, Abby Martin is out there pushing back on this constant harangue from the corporate media that the critical reporting on Clinton is why Donald Trump won. And we know that Hillary and the liberal snowflakes are trying to find somebody to blame rather than look at themselves in a mirror. They have maybe they're all vampires. Maybe they can't see themselves in a mirror. Sort of raises the question, you know, how did Dracula manage to get his hair combed and looking so neat? But here's the point. Reporting on candidates with an honest media is supposed to be critical. That's the media's traditional job, to serve as a watchdog on government abuse and corruption. And let us not lose sight of the fact that if Hillary Clinton and her team had been playing by the rules, both at the State Department and during the campaign, there wouldn't have been anything to be critical about. They're trying to blame the messenger. The attitude is, of course we're going to break the rules. Of course we're going to have private email servers. Of course we're going to steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders. How dare you report that to the voters? What's wrong with you people? So, all right, let's grab some phone calls. Tim in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing today, Mike?
Well, hanging in there.
I hadn't heard anything about John from his family from the Bahamas or wherever it is down there. Are they doing okay?
I have not heard anything back since the funeral, and I'm loath to intrude as to what's going on down there. But I know there was a huge global outpouring of sympathy and condolences and support, and but at this point, I prefer to just let them have their privacy.
Yes, sir. Well, now you said Lady Claire was a music director in a church.
She's a choir director, yes.
Oh well, tell her I'm praying for her because I was at for a little over a year in one of the churches here in Hot Springs, and I know what she's going through. She has to put up with the same things I had to put up with.
She's actually been a choir director. Well, she was a choir director before I even met her, and she's had several choirs during our marriage, and she was with her current community, and their existing choir director took off. And Claire just raised her hand and said, I'd be willing to be the interim choir director while you find somebody. And after about, few weeks, the pastor came back and said, I think we can take interim off because she is very good. She's a very good vocal coach, and of course it's an opportunity for Claire to get some of her original works performed, which is why I'm in there being the roadie.
Well, that's great. I wanted to bring back a man who we haven't heard from in a long time. His name is Ralph. I'm
going to have to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Tim in Hot Springs, and you wanted to enlighten us about Ralph Epperson.
Yeah, I've got three separate points, but the first one is Ralph. He wrote a book called The Unseen Hand, and I don't know how many people know about this book, but it'd be a good book to read if you want to really know what's going on. Bill Clinton made a mistake in '92 whenever he was giving one of his addresses, and he was talking about the 12 families that actually control all of our money. And this actually all goes back to money and everything. And behind it, of course, is child pedophilia. And it's all related. But if anybody hasn't heard of that book, it's called The Unseen Hand, and it's an amazing open. And, and I would recommend this book. But also, you made a statement yesterday about the pH of your water being about 7.4 and that being neutral. Is that right?
Well, I was that was supposed to be the ideal pH for the human body, and the issue was that the clean water standards call for a pH of 7.0, which is slightly acidic, and the question was, why are they doing that when having that pH in the ideal range for the human body would seem to make more sense in terms of the public health?
Yes, sir. Well, now, yes, neutral pH is 7.05, actually. It's per hydronium ions, and it's amazing to read about all this. I worked in a chemical plant for 15 years, 5 months, and 8 days, but don't tell anybody.
Okay.
but yeah, it's simply amazing. Yeah, you need the actual pH of our body is somewhere a little below 6, but see, what we add to our body, what we eat, and for fuel, raises or lowers that pH. And, of course, cancers can't grow in a basic environment like you're talking about.
Yes.
And that was the reason why in 1919 there was a doctor who got blackballed because of what he was speaking about that. He said, oh, yeah, just raise your pH on your body a couple of tenths, and also block the blood supply going to the tumor, and you have no more cancer. And it's amazing. They blackballed him over that, Mike. But anyway, I had to laugh about this because last time I called you, I was talking about the Gold Trail, of course, and I have a source that's actually told me this is correct now, and I'm not going to say another word about this because, like you, I got attacked on my computers. They actually turned one on that I had off of Wi-Fi, and it overheated it so bad. The only way I could get it back up was in the safety mode. And so I know what you're going through, and I'm glad you're doing this, Mike, because we need more people talking about these things. And but yeah, it's simply amazing. But yeah, it all comes back to child pedophilia, Mike. These people are disgusting, abusive people, and I'm glad you guys are speaking out about these things.
Well, you know, I understand that there's a lot of child sexual molestation going on with people in positions of power, authority, and wealth. I don't understand it, whether it's just that, because they get everything they want from life. There's no real challenge, and maybe it's the thrill of doing something so vile and getting away with it. But I really don't understand it, and to me, being a frustrated daddy, you know, I have a completely different view of how you're supposed to treat children. And, you know, it angers me. It's one of the areas where my emotions can sometimes get out of control. Yes.
Well, you know, I know you don't like talking about religion and all, but remember, this all comes back to a sacrifice. In other words, we either serve one God or we serve another God, and I don't want to get in more deeper in that because I know you don't like talking about these things. But they literally serve the God of the underworld, and so that's all I need to say.
Well, you know, that can be their excuse. I mean, the basic reality is good people are going to do good things, bad people are going to do bad things, and both are going to cite some religious doctrine, and you know, as their excuse and justification. The fact of the matter is, you know, it's almost like both politics and religion somehow make noble the basest of human desires, and maybe that's just a big part of it. That if you're that rich and that powerful, or you're wearing the right robes or anything, that you feel that you're allowed to do these things. And yes, I don't really understand it, and I don't really plan to invest a huge amount of time studying it. I just think it is evil, and it's vile, and it's wrong, and I'd like to see something done about it. And I certainly have noticed there's a weekly list that comes out of pedophile crimes in the church, And I've noticed lately that that list is, in fact, getting smaller and smaller and smaller as time goes on. And that, to me, says that maybe the church is finally starting to deal with this. They still want it out of the public eye, but they're still dealing with it. And again, I'm being deluged with emails about Pizzagate, and you know, I am not questioning the reality that the rich and powerful would love to have sex with children. We have the Franklin scandal here. BBC's got its own scandals over there. But Pizzagate feels like a setup, like a trap, to lure the independent media into a situation where they can be discredited and possibly sued for defamation. And that's why, basically, I stay away from that.
Yeah. Well, Ed, now that is true. In other words, that was a false flag on their side. And now I have one more point that was amazing. Last night I was talking to one of my, anyway, I'm just going to say, I was talking to a man, and he said that he believes now it's about 60% of our CIA has actually went rogue. And that's a concern to me, Mike. So that's the last point. We literally have to have something happen to this one arm of our government, or we are going to have a lot more problems. He gave me a reference about this, and I'm not going to say another word because last time I got attacked so bad on my server that I don't want to say another word about it. But I just want to say God bless, and y'all keep up the good work.
All right, well, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go here and switch over to Steve in California. Steve, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hey there, Michael. Yesterday you mentioned about pardons. We talked about the commuted sentence of Bradley Manning and Chelsea Manning, and I think that's a great thing. And but I started thinking about, you mentioned something else. We talked about, you know, pardons for Snowden and Julian Assange, and I started thinking about it. How could Obama possibly give a pardon to Julian Assange when basically he's not in the jurisdiction of the United States government? It would be under an international court if any kind of pardon would be given to Julian Assange, but you know, he just simply gave out information of the corruption, the wrong firings, the accidental bombs and killings of innocent people. He didn't give anything to the enemy to aid the enemy. So I was just kind of curious what you thought about that, because to me that would be under an international pardon if charges were filed on him against an international court, not a U.S. jurisdiction situation where a president can make a pardon for anybody.
Here's the situation. First of all, the only charges that currently exist against Julian Assange is a sexual assault charge, and that one's falling apart because the alleged victim has now gone public that she didn't actually make the allegations that are in the arrest report, which is someplace in Europe. The issue of a pardon for Julian Assange is if he sets foot back in the United States of America, he can be charged under Title 18. Now, the latest word we have is that Assange's lawyer is saying Assange does plan to keep his his end of the bargain with the commutation of Manning's sentence. Assange is going to be accepting extradition and come back to the United States of America. Now, it's not going to happen until after Trump is in office, but that's the issue there. Same thing with Edward Snowden. And there's two other pardons I'd like to see happen as well. Leonard Peltier, he's going to die in prison if he's not allowed out. And this is a man who, like James Earl Ray and so many others, tragically, has been railroaded into prison for a crime he did not commit for political reasons. And it's time to right that wrong as well.
Well, would the government be able to make, I mean, you might have to explain a little bit to me, I don't understand Title 18, but in Title 18, I would think you would have to have concrete proof to show that what he divulged to the public and the world, the atrocities that were being committed, would have benefited the enemy. And I can't see that to be the case. Could you explain a little bit more about Title 18? Well,
first of all, benefit doesn't have to be demonstrated. Neither does malicious intent. That's why James Comey's excuse for Hillary Clinton never passed muster. But the mere transmission of classified information, and some of this was classified, is basically considered an act of espionage, even if there's no money changed hands or anything at all. And you need to really read Title 18 all the way through and understand the various ins and outs. For example, if somebody leaks you some information to whistleblow, and then you turn around and you ask them for more, that's a Title 18 violation right there, because now you're soliciting an act of espionage. So you have to be very, very careful. I recommend that you read Title 18 all the way through.
Well, there appears to be a war on whistleblowers then. I mean, it's pretty sad that when you can't tell the people what's really going on, because you know we're not going to get the truth from our corporate media, but this guy puts his neck on the line, tells the truth of the atrocities, and he's the bad guy. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And Hillary Clinton sells out her country, and they're still saying she should be president.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Get better.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jeff in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, browser hijacking. Okay, I'm down to my 2 Dells have crashed, and I can't afford to get them fixed, and my iPad slipped into a mop bucket, and that's done. So I'm down to an iPhone and an old iPhone 5, and I read a lot of blogs, and so many of them, you can't even read like one line in the story, and it's taking you to load a app or a game or an ad, or wants you to send them your email.
Yeah,
what can we do?
It's completely out of control. I mean, as far as, you know, the American public, in fact, the whole world, it's open season on your electronic devices. And the reason is because, you know, the government turns a blind eye. The more malware that's out there, the more you are forced to buy security software, and that stimulates the economy. It's called the broken window effect. And the fact that we probably...
Is there any, like, anybody that could, like, design a site where you could, like, go to that site and then go out to one of your blogs, and it would tell you what crap it's going to try to throw at you and hopefully disarm it?
Well, there are some websites that you can go to. They can't disarm what's going on. If you're dealing with a browser hijacker, it is on your system, and as opposed to the web server.
Even an iPhone now can have a browser hijacking?
There's browser hijackers on the iPhone and on the Android. It's completely out of control.
So what do we do? How do we...
You go out and you buy security
software?
You can do that. You can do a factory reset and then reload the backup through iTunes. But if it sounds like you don't have your desktop anymore.
Well, what happened? I went to the Apple store last week, and they used their computer to restore me and set me up. And then when I got home and got on a Wi-Fi and plugged in the power, then it did the restore. But still, it's you know, you can't read more than 1 or 2 stories, and it wants to load an ad or you know, a game. I don't need any games or apps. Yeah,
it is out of control. I wish I could give you more advice, but it's like your privacy. The government won't protect your privacy. You have to take responsibility for it. The government is doing nothing about cybercrime and malware. You have to take that responsibility yourself. And it's a lot of work and a lot of money. And, you know, I'm really sympathetic, especially when you look at all this ransomware stuff. I mean, you could almost consider that an act of war. In fact, how does our government know that the ransomware attack plundering the American people isn't an act of war by a foreign country? They're not even looking.
I sold my laptop to a guy, a friend of mine, and I told him, because he didn't really have a lot of web experience, it says, beware of all the free porn, right?
Yes.
And when I went to bed, right, and like 5 hours later I get up and he's got some locked screen. And that was the end of that thing. So 5 hours and it was locked, and I don't know what happened to it, but...
Well, okay. I remember some years ago, I bought a laptop used from somebody who was just complaining that it was too slow to use anymore, and she was just going to go buy a new laptop anyway. And so she sold me her old laptop for ridiculously low price. And as is my normal practice, I never plug it into the local network until I've done a clean out on the machine. And I found something like 40 different pieces of malware on this laptop. And after I got it cleaned up, man, it was like brand new. It was really cruising along.
Well,
but it is.
How do you?
Well, I can't help you on the iPhone. I do know if you go to the App Store, there are security, anti-malware, antivirus apps that you can buy. And but it is an out-of-control problem. And I'm hoping after Trump gets into office, he's going to recognize that this out-of-control cyber malice, cybercrime, is a threat to the economy, and he's going to push for laws that are going to have really stiff penalties for the people doing this stuff. Personally, I'm in favor of public crucifixion as a way of deterring more of this stuff. But right now, when we have a government that thinks it's okay for this to happen because it forces us to buy security software, the problem is going to continue.
I think the people that do this should have millstones around their neck and only be allowed to run defrag and nothing else. Okay, we'll see you later.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You know, I heard a very effusive caller the other day describe you as the Jimi Hendrix of truth. And I thought that was kind of ironic, because I always sort of think of you as the John Lovitz of truth. But,
okay.
Okay. But one thing I wanted to mention about Assange, I just heard you say something about him allowing himself to be extradited in response to this commutation of the sentence. I heard someone else challenge that earlier today by pointing out that commutation is not the same as pardon, and supposedly he stipulated, that Chelsea Manning were pardoned. Of course, commutation doesn't negate the verdict, whereas a pardon negates the verdict, I believe.
No,
and so they're saying
a pardon is not the same thing as an exoneration. Okay, hang on there. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Glenn in Philadelphia about the difference between a pardon and a commutation. Both are forms of what is called clemency. And the difference between them is a commutation simply says, you served enough time in jail, we are letting you out. Okay? A pardon does not exonerate the crime, but it's an official forgiveness, and the difference between the commutation and the pardon is a pardon restores certain rights, such as the right to vote and to own firearms, which you do not get with a commutation. That's the difference between them. But neither one represents exoneration of the crime itself, and neither one can allow you to recover any fines that were imposed on you.
Gotcha. So that sounds like that makes a lot of sense. I think the distinction I heard being made earlier was incorrect, and what you're saying sounds correct. And so this commutation is then sufficient for Assange to submit then to extradition or whatever.
Well, that's Assange's decision to make, and apparently that is the decision that he did make, according to his lawyer.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Should be interesting to see what transpires. Actually, with all this talk about assassinations running, about these days, there might be some concern about his physical safety because, even if he's brought back to the U.S., there are still people who bear him ill will and are probably afraid of things he could release in the future. So I would think he would still need to be a pretty well-protected guy, whether in or out of jail.
I imagine so. I mean, there's a lot of wet work going on right now, and anybody who's involved in speaking truth to power has to be very vigilant and very careful and really have an eye on their security.
Amen. All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
All right. Thank you. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. What's on your mind today? Dustin, are you there?
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing
Hope you
fine.
feel better.
Yeah. Well, I actually feel good. My temperature is normal. It's just the voice is taking a while to recover.
Hey, Mike. One of the things before I talk about the topic I called is a lot of people, if you have ability to use a wired connection over wireless, I'd pick wired over wireless any day.
Yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement. Wi-Fi can be hacked from outside. We know that the Wi-Fi routers themselves can be hacked. And even if you have people who are trying to find out about you, using a wireless mouse and keyboard is broadcasting everything that you are doing to the immediate neighborhood. And so, you know, here at Michael Rivero, it's all wired keyboards, wired mice, hardwire wherever possible. We do have Wi-Fi, but it's extremely secure, and certain things are not allowed to happen over it.
Yeah, wireless is just too prone to interference.
I agree.
Can you hold me over?
Yeah, I'm going to hold you over here because I got a weird story to share with you. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And before I hand it on back to you, we're talking about the security risks of using wireless keyboards and wireless mice, of literally broadcasting what you are doing in the privacy of your own home to anybody outside who has the appropriate equipment to pick up those signals and interpret them. And it was kind of interesting because the mouse on Claire's desktop suffered a failure, and so I went down to the local Office Depot to buy a new corded mouse. And I walk on in, and there's this big display of wireless mice on sale for $9 each. And I get a store clerk and I say, I don't want a wireless mouse. They go through batteries way too fast, and there's a security issue. Do you have any mice with cords on it? The only one they had was $85. It's like they're pushing the wireless on us in order to make us more vulnerable to outside hackers.
Must have been one of those razor mice.
No, it wasn't. It was a gamer's mouse, but it wasn't a razor mouse. I mean, besides, the razor mice are not wireless. I use them here because I'm very rough on the hardware, and I discovered that if I use gaming keyboards and mice, they take a pounding. It's still not enough. I'm on my 3rd Razer keyboard on this desktop machine now. I have a really heavy type because I learned to type on a mechanical typewriter, and I played piano, and so I'm very, very rough on keyboards.
If anybody doesn't know what a mechanical keyboard, get one. They're amazing.
Yeah, I hate the little chiclet keyboards and the soft touch ones. I love the feel of a mechanical keyboard.
Hey, Mike, Joe Biden said it all. Threat to the global order. The global order is in decline, so they're going to do anything they can, including revolution in this country, to keep the global order the way it is, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm afraid they are not going to go quietly into that good night.
And that's all I wanted to say, Mike.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We're going to switch over to Bruce in Texas. Aloha, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. It's been a while.
Okay. What's on your mind?
Yeah. I got to make it quick here. I happen to be a road scholar. Means I'm a truck driver in the series for the radio. Anyhow, what do you think the odds are that the polonium, what's the correct pronunciation for that poison that killed that Russian triple agent and allegedly poisoned Roger Stone with?
Yeah, and also Yasser Arafat. There are indications that polonium-210 was used on him as well.
That's right, Arafat. Yeah, especially Arafat. What do you think the odds are that they all came from a single source somewhere in the desert there in Israel?
Well, polonium is actually very easy to get. It has a lot of industrial applications for destaticking devices. In fact, back before they realized how dangerous it was, in the days of phonograph records, they would actually sell this little thing in the audiophile stores that was a destatiker, and it was a little handle with a little strip of polonium in there and a brush, and you would clean your records with it before playing to get rid of the dust and the static electricity, because the earliest cartridges, which were using magnetic coils, that static electricity would result in pops and crackles. And so it's really available in a lot of different places. Certainly in the case of Yasser Arafat, I would look at Israel. In the case of the Russian spy, it was blamed on Putin, but there were a lot of people who wanted to kill him. In the case of Roger Stone, I would say a more domestic source is likely.
Yeah. I have happen to entertain this angle that I don't hear reference too much, especially on shows like Alex Jones. I think the whole angle on the anti-Russian propaganda over the last few years, 90% of it due to Israel's frustration with the Middle East, blocking their moves in Iran and Syria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just Israel that's frustrated by that. So is the United States. You know, Israel wants to expand into Eretz Israel, but the United States agenda, Wesley Clark blew the whistle on this, was to conquer and control all the oil-producing nations of the Middle East, shackle them to the U.S. dollar, to basically maintain control over that oil and the currency that it was being traded in. That agenda is failing. And it looks like Syria is going to be pretty much cleaned out of the U.S.-backed terrorists within the next few weeks.
Okay, have you ever seen the movie, we talked about movies before, have you ever seen the movie Munich by Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, I did a long time ago, but my understanding of what happened in Munich is a little different than Steven's.
It seems to me more like a PR piece for Mossad.
Well, I mean, the Mossad faked a lot of terror attacks to build sympathy. The British intelligence released documents a few years back that Shin Bet actually organized the hijacking that led to the raid on Entebbe, so they could say, oh, bad Palestinians, heroic Israelis, and so forth and so on. There are indications that Abu Nidal, this evil Palestinian terrorist who threw the guy in the wheelchair off the cruise ship, that he was actually working for Mossad. And Mossad and Shin Bet set up all these terror attacks to blame the Palestinians so that the world will sympathize with poor Israel and hate the Palestinians. And by the way, Israel is already out there saying, oh, there's a new plot to terror bomb synagogues all across America. So they're playing for sympathy again, which means they're about ready to do something really ugly.
Yeah. Okay, I have a hard drive full of information that has accumulated over the years, and I like to call it dead man's drop to share it with somebody. Okay, I'm
having a hard time understanding you. This is a really, really bad phone connection. You have a hard. What?
Any possible way?
Oh, okay. I did not hear what you said. Possible way to do what?
To forward you some material physically.
Well, yeah, you can put it in an envelope and mail it to the address on the donations page. It goes to a local post office box.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Bruce. And we're going to switch over to Keith in Montana. Aloha. First of all, before we do that, shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And now we're going to talk with Keith in Montana. What's on your mind today?
Well, first off, I want to give condolences for Clara's mouse.
Yeah, we buried it with full military honors.
Yeah, that Judith Miller you were talking about earlier in her rave for the 2003.
Yeah.
I was going to do a correction on that. The listed U.S. war deaths in Iraq were those killed in action. That did not count, as my veteran friends would tell me, of those that died in transport from Iraq to the Germany's hospitals.
Yeah, that was how they were fudging the numbers. And not only were they fudging the numbers downward with that, but their families were denied killed in combat pay.
Yeah. Have you, Mike, have you ever stopped to read that Ramsey Clark's Fire and Ice?
No, I can't say that I have.
You should Google that and read that. That's when the first ground war actually started. Actually, it was an air war that started over in Iraq. And if you read that, how they called it a turkey shoot and everything, where the U.S. choppers would show up in the middle of the night over a mile away and start blasting all the Iraqis, and even those that surrendered were shot and everything like that. It's a very interesting article, but it shows the amount of tonnage of bombs and stuff that were used on that campaign over there, or conflagration, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
And it's, and again, this is all based basically on lies. It's like somebody put a map out there on Twitter the other day that it showed Iran renamed as BP, Syria, Exxon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's basically the truth of it, you know.
Yeah, that,
anyway,
that really is it. Okay, well, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, Mike, one more thing.
Yes.
My one veteran told me, he says that when he was over in Iraq, he served 3 tours over there. He says he had a little Iraqi boy come up to him and say, you know, we never had suicide bombings, never had suicide or car explosions and stuff like that before you guys got here.
Yeah.
And that's a stark contrast to what we see from our media today, you know.
Well, do you remember when the U.S. invaded Iraq for the second time? There was this brief scandal where the Iraqi police pulled over a suspicious-looking car, and they found 2 British SAS officers in it, and in the car they found explosives and Arab clothing. And so they arrested these SAS operatives, and the British Army literally attacked the police station to free them before they could be questioned.
Was that like the ISIS flags found in Israel?
Yeah, right.
My best to you, Mike, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot, Keith. We're going to let you go. Now then, as you know, not too long ago, opera star Andrea Bocelli backed out of performing at the Trump inauguration after receiving death threats. Well, another invitee to Trump's inauguration, singer Jennifer Holliday, has now backed out after being smeared and attacked. And she's black. And, of course, right now they're desperate to prove that Trump is a racist. And having a black artist like Jennifer Holliday singing at the inauguration, that can't be allowed to happen. So she was being attacked online by fellow blacks and by the gay community. And this is obviously another demonstration of tolerance and peace and love Trump's hate coming from the liberal snowflakes. They really are behaving like children, and, you know, it's almost reached an all-or-nothing mindset, where they're either going to succeed in driving Trump out and putting Hillary in, and if they fail, their credibility and legitimacy is destroyed. Liberalism, the Democratic Party, certainly Hillary and her people, I mean, they've savaged their own public image along with that of the corporate media. Plus the fact that if they do kick up a huge fuss after Donald Trump takes his oath of office, he will have the authority to call in the National Guard, if necessary, the Marines, and start throwing these people in prison. They are committing major crimes: incitement to riots, incitement to violence, incitement to, conspiracy to commit murder. We might actually see some mass hangings in the near future. I'd like the rope franchise. Now, John McCain is out there trying to regain the moral high ground over this dossier that claimed Donald Trump and two prostitutes defaced a bed in the presidential suite of the Moscow hotel where Obama and Michelle had once slept. And the story turned out to be completely bogus, totally over the shark. And McCain is out there saying, well, the leak of this report, it was totally wrong. It was a totally wrong thing to do. Forgetting that McCain himself was part of that pipeline. He was used as a propaganda laundry. Because the report was given to McCain, and McCain gave it to the intelligence agencies, who then incorporated it as if it were fact into their reports on Donald Trump, which were then leaked to the media. And most of the media, even they thought it was just way beyond the pale of belief, until BuzzFeed ran it. Now, it has since come on out that this report originated with a private intelligence firm, Fusion GPS, and they were hired back in September 2015 after Donald Trump announced he was going to run. And they were very well funded. And now, according to this article that is over in Journal Neo, the mystery donor who funded this fraudulent report is George Soros. And Soros has made himself into one of the strongest possible arguments for socialism by showing to us how dangerous it is to let individuals acquire too much wealth. They start acting like they own the world and they can do whatever they want. Soros is not elected to be the government of anything other than his own corporations. And yet he's out there interfering with governments all over the world. He's certainly tinkering with our government, and it's easy to prove that he's doing it. But the corporate media says, oh, Russia's hacking, Russia's doing this, Russia's interfering. And finally, Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, who's been sitting back very quietly listening to all this smearing going on about Russia interfering with the U.S. election, came on out and said, look, you've got the leaders and top officials from Great Britain, Germany, and France were grossly interfering in U.S. internal affairs. They campaigned for Hillary Clinton and supported her, openly attacked Donald Trump. And unlike the accusations of Russian interference, Lavrov's claim is easily substantiated because all of this was being reported in the news. Angela Merkel supports Hillary Clinton. Doesn't that represent foreign interference? It's only bad when Russia does it here. Now then, getting on back to the ongoing battle between the corporate media and the White House. The White House is now saying that they may abandon the idea of moving the press briefing room. And but they're certainly going to exert control over who gets in there and who doesn't. And they're still talking about allowing bloggers and talk radio hosts access. Now, the White House press secretary is seriously talking about requiring journalists to undergo drug testing in order to receive White House press credentials. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a very, very good idea because reading what some of these people are writing, you have to wonder if they're taking way too many prescription antidepressants. There is still talk, as Obama goes through his flurry of pardons and commutations, that he may yet, before Friday, issue a blanket pardon of Hillary Clinton for all crimes she may have committed in order to prevent any investigations. Now that, of course, will be the biggest of black marks on his legacy. Everybody will remember Barack Obama as the president who covered up for a Secretary of State who may have sold out her nation while serving in office. Because the corporate media and the government are no longer in control of the history. We the people are. We'll decide for ourselves what is worth remembering and what is not. We'll decide for ourselves who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. We'll decide for ourselves what the real news is and what the fake news is. And most importantly, to all those war hawks out there, we the American people are big boys and big girls. We can decide for ourselves who our enemies are and who our friends are. We don't need you to tell us that anymore. By the way, if you're in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration and you still want to stock up on some Hillary Clinton memorabilia for possible gifts, it's discounted 75% in Washington, D.C. And it's a shame that the losers of the presidential elections don't get a museum. Because if there was going to be a Hillary Clinton museum, I have all these items I had here during the election, the toilet paper, the toilet brush, the nutcracker, and most especially the Hillary inflatable love doll that I would gladly donate to the Hillary Clinton Museum. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. When we come on back, we're going to be talking about the war zones. There is a lot going on that we need to pay attention to because it does seem like there are certain parties who are desperate to start the bombs and missiles flying before Trump can take that oath of office. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And when it comes to computer security, one of the products that I've been recommending is Malwarebytes, and I'm going to have to withdraw that recommendation because over this last week, all of a sudden, Malwarebytes is now blocking a lot of truth websites, labeling them as malicious websites. They were blocking global research, and now they're blocking strategic culture. And I guess it's only a matter of time before I'm declared a malicious website and put onto the filter as well. So they are now off my list of recommended security software. All righty, we're going to take some more phone calls. Bob in Michigan. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael. I've been listening to any number of networks talking about Obama can't pardon Edward Snowden because he wasn't charged with a crime. Well, wouldn't that not apply to Hillary Clinton also? Legally, technically, yes. Unfortunately, Gerald Ford set a very bad precedent when Richard Nixon resigned, where Ford simply issued a blanket presidential pardon for everybody involved in Watergate and then declared our long national nightmare is over. But technically, a pardon cannot be granted until somebody's convicted of a crime. And Gerald Ford was trying to end the investigation before the American people found out just how dirty this whole thing had been. And Obama could easily do the same, and certainly nobody within the government is going to stand up and challenge him on that, because if that anonymous FBI source is correct and everybody's dirty with the Clinton Foundation, they just all want this to go away. They want the American people to go back to believing that government is good, our government is good, everybody else's government is bad, corporate media is honest. It's not going to happen, but you know they're kind of stuck in a corner. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Robin in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. It's just the voice is taking a while to recover.
Well, I'm all in for the health cures and all that stuff, but we went through that. I'm in Texas, and allergies abound, and I have a little asthma. If you want to get over the hump, Zyrtec. I got to say, it's over the counter, but it's effective.
Well, right now I'm sticking.
I'm not doing a commercial.
I'm sticking with the Manuka honey and the Nano Silver, and it does seem to be working. Like I said, it's just the coughing over the last weekend did injure my vocal cords, and it's just going to take a while for them to recover.
And yeah, and you're talking every day is kind of keeping it going.
Yeah,
too,
it's not helping. I should really just like shut up for 3 or 4 days, but I've got the weekend coming on up here, and so after Friday's show, I'm going to be doing sign language for the rest of the weekend.
That'll be good. That'll be good. A good rest. Well, I just the inauguration coming up, and in Texas here we have a great group, several groups of biker clubs that they are going to be going, and they are going to be helping, making their services available. If they have to give a blockade for the blockades, I'm really proud of them, risking life and limb to go out there.
Good for them, but considering their opposition, I don't think it's that big a risk of life and limb. I think anybody looking at all these bikers, being confronted by all these liberal snowflakes, you're just going to start laughing at just how one-sided this is going to be.
That's what I'm hoping, but they do tend to get a bit psychotic. And a psychotic person is a dangerous person, even if they're a snowflake.
I understand that, but again, by virtue of that psychosis, by virtue of the personality cult behavior, they're not going to be organized. They're not going to be disciplined. There's not going to be any tactical communication going on. And I think it's going to take maybe 2 cracked skulls, and everybody's going to run like heck.
I hope so, because all this noise, I mean, we saw it happening last year, even here where we live, them blocking overpasses and things like this, blocking traffic, and it's so dangerous if somebody's trying to get to the hospital, if somebody has a heart attack waiting in there because they're anxious. That should be criminal.
That did happen. That did happen at one point.
Yes, it happened all over.
Yeah, they blocked an ambulance and the person died because they couldn't get to the hospital. Anyway, Robin, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for commercials and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Paul in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I've been reading about the Democrats who publicly announced they're going to stay away from the inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
And I just heard something about Obama is going to take Air Force One for a last ride out to Palm Springs, California during this inauguration. It makes me wonder what the CIA has planned. The Democrats are away, Obama's up in the air, and if they got something planned to knock out Trump and a whole bunch of people.
Well, I had not heard that Obama was taking Air Force One out to Palm Springs, and technically, as soon as Trump takes the oath of office, it's not Obama's plane to fly around in anymore.
I was wondering if that's a fact, if he could actually ground that plane, prevent Obama from using it, even before he's inaugurated.
No, he can't. It's basically, I'll tell you what the letter of the law would be. On the instant that Trump takes the oath of office, Obama becomes a private citizen, and then he is personally, financially liable for the cost of the operation of that aircraft.
Okay.
From that point in time forward, if he's on Air Force One, he has to pay for it. That's a big plane.
Sure. I can't remember how many millions of dollars it cost.
You know, but the last word I had was that Obama was going to be attending the inauguration, the swearing in at least.
Well, I hope so. He should be.
Yeah.
He should be arrested right after that.
Well, I'm far more concerned about Hillary being arrested than Barack Obama. As far as Obama's concerned, let's just let him go on off and do his speaking tours and everything else here. Hillary's the real problem. Hillary and Bill, mostly Hillary.
I agree. And the majority of the people that voted for Trump want to see that happen, myself included.
Yes, absolutely. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, end of ISIS. Russia and Turkey launch a joint aircraft campaign against the remaining jihadists in Aleppo. And apparently the Russian fighter pilots are coordinating with their counterparts in Turkey. And basically they're just, it's a mop-up operation. They're going on in. These last holdouts should have accepted Assad's offer of amnesty. They didn't. The U.S. is still trying to airdrop supplies into these people. And maybe what they're hoping is that either Syria or Russia will shoot down one of these American planes, which are in Syria illegally. They do not have the permission of the Syrian government to be overflying Syrian territory. But Assad and Putin are too smart to bite. Now, Iran is stepping on in. They want joint action with Riyadh in Syria based on the success they had in Lebanon last year. And what's happening here is the U.S. game plan, and for that matter, Israel's game plan for the Middle East was keep all these nations fighting each other. And then the U.S. comes on in and says, we will arbitrate between you, always in Israel's favor. And now all of a sudden, all these Middle Eastern nations are starting to come together, work together, to unify and deal with these issues themselves. This is a nightmare scenario, especially for Israel. Israel doesn't want a single Islamic nation in the Middle East. They want lots and lots of little tiny countries that can be bullied around and threatened. And all of a sudden we're seeing Iran and Saudi Arabia and Syria and all these all coming together, almost forming their own Middle Eastern Union, and that obviously represents a major defeat for U.S. and Israeli policy in the region. It's all falling apart on them. All falling apart here. Now, Syria has finally come on out and said it is time to start reining in some of the out-of-control propaganda used to sell this war to the American people. And we already talked about how a few years ago Obama and Kerry were trying to sell a direct U.S. intervention into Syria on the claim that Assad had weapons of mass destruction. And that was kind of a hard one because we all still remember how the U.S. government and the corporate media lied to us about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. And they were making a big stink about chemical weapons, and Putin stepped on in, the global statesman, and he arranged a deal where Assad said, sure, you can take away the chemical weapons. I have no intention of using them anyway. And so the U.S. wanted to prove that Assad had cheated. He still had chemical weapons, and they came out with this claim that Assad had gassed his own Alawite supporters with sarin gas right in front of United Nations chemical weapons inspectors on the very day they arrived. That was the big story. Can we invade now? Can we invade now? And, of course, look for what should be there and isn't. And what wasn't there was a reason for Assad to do something that stupid, knowing that any use of any chemical weapons would open the door to U.S. invasion. So why would he do it? There was no motive. And you'd ask people, okay, why would he do it? What is this? Well, he doesn't need a motive. He's just insane, you know. He doesn't have to make sense. That was their limp excuse on that one. And then ultimately, of course, the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors came on back and said, no, it looks like the U.S.-backed terrorists were carrying out chemical weapons attacks to frame Assad. So the chemical weapon thing kind of went away, and then the U.S. was making war on Syria, claiming they were after ISIS and al-Qaeda. Now we know that the U.S. was actually supporting ISIS and al-Qaeda as proxies against Bashar al-Assad. So then they came on back about the horrible humanitarian disaster taking place in Syria because of Syria's use of barrel bombs. Oh my goodness, it's a barrel bomb. And the more they reported on these non-existent weapons, the greater and greater they grew, to the point where the corporate media was trying to claim that one of these barrel bombs was equivalent to a magnitude 8 earthquake. And so the Independent had a headline just a week ago. Assad dropped 13,000 barrel bombs on Syria in 2016, Watchdog claims. And this Watchdog was one of these propaganda laundering operations that were set on up. So taking the claim by the corporate media that a barrel bomb is equivalent to a magnitude 8 earthquake, and it's equivalent to the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima. The Independent was claiming that Syrian President Assad personally dropped the equivalent of 13,000 atomic bombs on his own country and people in the last 12 months. Oh, look, is that a shark down there? And the attitude of the corporate media is, how dare you not believe us when we tell you all these horrible things are being done? No, we don't believe you. Fool me once, and so forth and so on here. Now, pro-Iraq war politician David Frum is out there on Twitter. Now, this is one of the guys who was out there screaming, Saddam has nuclear bombs, we got to go for war. Now, he's out there saying, Russia's coming to get us. Russia's going to come on in and force you to drink vodka and eat little fish eggs and all the other stuff. Okay, David, if you feel that way, here's your rifle, here's your parachute. We'll call Putin and tell him you are on your way to kick his butt all by yourself. I wish it were that simple. Unfortunately, Lithuania yesterday signed an agreement with the United States allowing the presence of U.S. troops. And Lithuania borders Russia and Belarus. They're basically building up that invasion front. And of course, as usual, the excuse for all this military buildup on Russia's borders, Russia made us do it, Mommy. Russia's being aggressive. They made us get ready for World War III. Russia's not the aggressor. Do you see Russian tanks on the Canadian side of our northern border? Do you see Russian troops massed on the Mexican side of our southern border? Do you see Russian warships tooling around the Gulf of Mexico? They've made this entire cause for war up out of thin air. The rationale for this is that the United States and the West refused to recognize Crimea's referendum for independence. Therefore, by default, Russia stole it. Therefore, Russia's the aggressor. You can see how convoluted the thinking is. And they actually apparently think the American people are stupid enough to believe this nonsense. So, let us talk a little bit about the economy, which is going to be Trump's biggest headache in office, assuming that World War III is not started in the next 48 hours. Deutsche Bank has reached a $7.2 billion settlement with the U.S. over mortgage misconduct. None of the executives are going to go to prison. It's great to be a banker in the United States of America. All that's going to happen to those executives, some of them are going to have their bonuses cut. That's it. And their bonuses aren't being cut because they were committing fraud with the mortgages. Their bonuses are being cut because they got caught. Now, most of that settlement will come off Deutsche Bank's taxes, which means the taxpayers will pay the majority of it. Some of it will be covered by increasing fees to Deutsche Bank customers. And Deutsche Bank has just announced they're going to cut about 20% of their workforce. So the ordinary employees who had nothing to do with this are going to pay the price. Now, according to New York-based retail consultant Howard Davidowitz, Macy's is in serious, serious trouble, and they may be closing literally hundreds of their stores over the next year. They had a disastrous Christmas season. They're blaming the shift to online shopping, which is partly true, but the other part is simply that the American people don't have money to buy things. And I find it amazing that those people who are in charge of our economic well-being don't seem to understand that. When you have a system that by design funnels all the wealth to the very top and leaves nothing on the bottom, who do you think is going to go into those shopping malls? Now, women's apparel chain Limited Stores has filed for Chapter 11, and it's closing all of its 250 stores. Claire and I were down at the local mall where the Sam's Club is, and we're just looking at all those retail vacancies. It's really getting, how should I put this, unhappy out here. Meanwhile, Tiffany and Company had a very bad sales Christmas season. They're blaming Donald Trump. Their flagship store in New York is right next door to Trump Tower, and now, originally Tiffany was saying, well, obviously people don't have money for these high-end luxury items, which is true and accurate, but now they're on the let's bash Donald Trump by saying all the traffic congestion around Trump Tower and all this other, it scared our customers away. So it's all Trump's fault that we didn't do as well. Lowe's is getting ready to cut 2,400 full-time jobs. Meanwhile, Hyundai is the latest car company trying to curry favor with Trump. It's announced it's going to invest $3 billion in its U.S. factories over the next 4 years. Meanwhile, over at Boeing, Boeing has decided that maybe they might have been sort of inflating the price of the replacement for Air Force One. And so they're going to cut it on back. That's good business dealing. We've never seen that before. And, of course, Trump also has issues with this horribly overpriced F-35, which doesn't really seem able to do much of anything except look impressive on the runway. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello, Michael. Long time no talk. Yeah, Mike, I want to talk about Bernie Sanders today in the confirmation hearing when he's saying all these poor American kids are in poverty and all that. And what a schmuck this guy is. And you got that Chucky Schmucky Schumer. I mean, these Zog agents, I don't know, what are they, Michael? It's unbelievable. You got this Bernie Sanders talking about there's no, the kids are in poverty, or the United States treats its citizens like working people. Tom, okay. I know you got a lot of invective to get off of your chest. Let me ask you a question. What is the average net worth of Americans between the ages of 18 and 30? The net worth probably, I'd probably save $500. I don't know.
It's 17. It's a little over $17,000. Bernie Sanders is right. Our younger generation is living in poverty.
Okay, Michael, then you know what? Let me ask you a question. Then you're right. Then let me ask you this. I found out these Cuban refugees with the wet foot, dry foot policy get $17,000 to come to the United States if they get their foot on the beach. Now, Obama rescinded that now last week. But before that, they were getting 5 years of Section 8 housing. They were getting 4-year food stamps welfare for 4 or 5 years, and they get $17,000, and they get a $10,000 furniture voucher for their new apartment that they're bringing here in South Florida. So let me ask you a question. Bernie Sanders is so worried about the poor white people or Jewish people or whatever, black Afro-American people or Americans in this country. Why are these all illegals coming here with all this kind of money they're getting from Cuba?
Because Soros wants it to.
What did Bernie Sanders ever do?
Because Soros.
Immigration.
Well, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, Bernie Sanders is on board with this open borders policy, and it is costing huge amounts of money. These people are being bribed to move here. By the way, I misread that article. The average net worth of Americans between the ages of 18 and 30 is negative $17,612. They're in debt. Okay, and that is a really bad number. Now, obviously, Trump coming on in, this open borders nonsense is going to start shutting on down here. But I think a lot of Americans were very angry over this idea that these illegal immigrants and foreign refugees are getting a better deal from the U.S. government than the ordinary American people. And they're having a hard time trying to figure out why. And anytime somebody asks a question like this, you know, all you get back is, oh, you're just being heartless. You're just being heartless. We have an obligation to let these people in. No, you don't. That's what borders are for.
Well, Michael, you're absolutely right. And in South Florida, they don't even want to learn to speak English. Let's not kid ourselves. We got places like Bosnia and Herzegovina here in South Florida.
Okay.
But I want to make this point to you also,
Tom, I gotta let you go. Got to do a commercial break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about the economy here right now. The IMF has cut Mexico's economic growth forecast for this year, apparently over concern over what the U.S. policy toward Mexico is going to be. And certainly if Trump is bringing jobs back into the United States of America, that obviously means that there's going to be an employment crisis down in Mexico. So the IMF is getting very, very nervous there. Now, following criticisms by Donald Trump over Germany's refugee policy and how damaging and destructive it has been to the people of Germany, Germany came on back, and they did score a valid, legitimate point, which is the U.S. wars all across that part of the globe that made these people refugees in the first place. Now, they're not addressing the issue that Soros and his non-governmental organizations were trying to lure those people into Europe. But yeah, everyone says, oh, you're heartless, you've got to feel bad for those refugees. Let's talk about the wars started by the United States that made them refugees. Why isn't anybody talking about that? Certainly not in the corporate media. The corporate media never met a war they didn't like. Wars sell newspapers. William Randolph Hearst was pushing for that Spanish-American War. He knew it would make him richer. Now, Donald Trump, as you know, we reported a few days ago, basically announced that when Great Britain leaves the European Union, he's going to have a fast-track trade deal for Great Britain. And that was done to basically pull the teeth out of a threat coming out of Brussels that unless Great Britain agreed to certain conditions of leaving, that there would be a trade blockade from that common market. We won't do business with you anymore. And Trump said, that's okay, you can come do business with us. Now, the conditions Brussels wants to impose on Great Britain, for Great Britain to have its freedom, is to still allow the open borders so the refugees can pour on in without restriction, and for Great Britain to continue paying into the budget of the European Union. Well, those are the two issues that led to the Brexit. So what Brussels is saying is you can go off and be free, but you're not really going to be free. You're still going to be our slave. You will still do what we tell you. Now, Trump's announcement has provided a huge boost to the Brexit, hard Brexit campaign. And as it... We're going to take a break here. We'll be back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And somebody just sent me the story confirming that, yes, after the inauguration, when Barack Obama is no longer the President of the United States of America, he and his family are going to fly to Palm Springs for a vacation. But the ABC News is confirming the Obamas will use the presidential plane. It won't be called Air Force One because that designation is only used for the aircraft where the current president is on board. How the heck do the Obamas get to use that aircraft for a private vacation as private citizens? That aircraft does not belong to them. Technically, it belongs to we, the American people. This is utterly insane. I mean, I can understand Barack Obama pocketing a couple of ashtrays going on out of the White House, but he's not allowed to just fly off with the plane. Technically, he should be forced to reimburse the Treasury Department for an illegal use of a government property. He absolutely does not have a right to be using that aircraft once he is no longer President of the United States of America. And technically, that aircraft is supposed to be used for official business, not gallivanting around the globe. It's ridiculous. The man has no shame. No shame whatsoever. And I hope incoming President Donald Trump will make it a point of saying the Obamas owe the American people, the taxpayers, the reimbursement for that obviously inappropriate use of taxpayer assets. Okay, now then, getting on back to the immigration refugee issue. Trump is already cozying up to Great Britain. Fast-track trade deal, visa-free travel, and at the same time, Trump is saying that European Union citizens may face U.S. travel restrictions. Extreme vetting, which means going through getting a visa so that you can be checked. And that, too, is a big boost for the Brexit. Now, Britain's decision to quit the EU single market has revived the push for Scottish independence, which they would be independent now if there hadn't been so much vote fraud during their independence referendum. And there was so much election fraud there, they weren't even trying to hide it. There were videos of ballot box stuffing. There were a couple of stories where the counting centers were evacuated twice on bomb threats. There were no bombs found, but obviously while the building was empty, people could go on in there with stacks of ballots. It was a completely ridiculous referendum. And surveys among the people of Scotland didn't match the referendum results. The vast majority of people in Scotland wanted their independence back. And somehow the referendum said remain a slave to the British Empire. Now, as it turns out, the reason the EU is in a panic over Britain's leaving is apparently Britain accounted for 15 billion pounds of the European Union's budget. Right now, with most of the member states of the European Union in serious economic trouble, all of it created by that private central bank, the ECB, Great Britain and Germany have been carrying the load for keeping the whole system propped up. And Britain's not going to be there anymore, and certainly the people of Germany are not going to be willing to be carrying the losses for the entire European Union all by themselves, especially while dealing with the influx of refugees and all the problems being created. But it looks to me like we may well see the breakup of the European Union in the immediate future, because it was built with this built-in self-destruct device called the European Central Bank. And then throwing the refugees on there only made the situation worse. A lot of the member nations of the European Union are talking their own exits now. And the European Union Commission is now out there taking the ground. You can't have referendums. You're not allowed to break free. Actually, it's in the Charter that member nations of the EU can leave when they want to. So this whole globalist, one world government agenda is falling apart. Brexit was a major body blow, Trump's election a major body blow, and they're panicking. They've invested decades and billions, possibly trillions of dollars trying to create the one world government, and it's slipping away from them. As it should. The one world government will be history's most tyrannical dictatorship. It has to be, merely to survive the circumstances of its own creation. And I've had enough with dictatorships. I want to go back to a simpler system, where we're basically allowed to live our lives as long as we're not harming each other and the government minds its own business. And we're just go on out and prosper by our own hands. Okay, now then, let's see. As we mentioned before, Julian Assange's lawyer is saying that Assange is ready for extradition to the United States. And he may come on back arguing for clemency or pardon based on that of Chelsea Manning. But he's not going to do it until Chelsea Manning's actual release, which is slated to happen, I think, sometime in May. Now, right after Obama's announcement of a commutation of sentence for Chelsea Manning, Russia announced that they have agreed to allow Edward Snowden to stay in Russia for an additional 3 years. In 1 more year, Edward Snowden will be eligible for Russian citizenship. So, good on Putin for that one. Now then, the liberal snowflakes are still out there doing what they're doing. Over at Marquette University, apparently students are being required to attend mandatory social justice workshops. And they literally are tracked to make sure that they are completing all these different workshops on social justice to get their indoctrination to be liberal snowflakes. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. How does a social justice workshop, in which they're being taught that straight white males are the root of all evil and other such nonsense, how does a social justice workshop prepare these students to find jobs that pay enough to pay back those student loans? Don't these universities feel they have a responsibility to help those students prepare for high-paying jobs to repay those student loans? Or is the attitude of, you know, we're just getting you on the debt hook early in life and our job is to indoctrinate you? We're hearing now about calls out in California for the public school system to have classes to teach their students to trust the corporate media and distrust everything in the independent media. How does that help these kids prepare to get into college? Our education system is a joke. It's no longer about education. It's about indoctrination. And yes, there's always been a little indoctrination in the system, but it seems to have overwhelmed the actual teaching of useful skills. Now, there's a story that came out of, pardon me, government slaves, where there's a school in Michigan where a 4th grade class will not be allowed to view Donald Trump's inauguration speech because the teacher, Brett Mitteyer, is concerned about what President Trump may say. And if he doesn't agree with it, he doesn't want his 4th graders to hear it. Actually, that's not your job. Over at Planned Parenthood, they're under fire again. They're actually having workshops to train Planned Parenthood workers to spot undercover journalists, to get rid of them. They don't want any of that stuff getting on out there. Pretty ugly. All right, well, let's talk about human-caused global warming. And again, Donald Trump's pick for head of the Department of Energy has vowed he's going to end this scam. And it is. That's all it was. It was a scam. Spain has been hit with the heaviest snowfall for 35 years. School closures, beaches at numerous coastal resorts have been wiped out by freak snowstorms, roads cut off. Even Mallorca woke up to a blanket of snow. That's just something that doesn't happen there. The canals of Venice have frozen, the Baltic has frozen, and still the DNC wants to prosecute anybody talking about a new mini ice age or that global warming isn't real. And what is the corporate media reporting about this? Oh, that Gavin Schmidt, the director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, is saying 2016 was the hottest year ever recorded, and scientists say human activity is to blame. Those of us who actually worked there said that NASA stands for never a straight answer. Now, I'm very much in favor of a renewed space exploration program, not because I care about seeing our flags on other worlds, but because the tech boom of the 70s, 80s, and 90s was born in the Apollo moon missions. When you go out into space, you've got to solve some problems, and those solutions have commercial application. Our government, our business leaders, foolishly, over the last decades, have allowed many of those technologies developed by the space program to simply be licensed to other countries, where they are making the money for the manufacturing. And those countries are not going to be foolish enough to let it come back to the United States of America. We're going to have to leapfrog ahead. And we need a civilian technology incubator. And a revived space exploration program is the perfect way to do it, because we know from the 1960s it worked before. But the current NASA management has to be replaced. They've all been co-opted by Al Gore and his carbonazis. They've all sold out their scientific integrity. Nobody's going to believe anything they have to say at NASA, or for that matter, NOAA, which was caught fudging the data to come up with this claim that 2016 was the hottest year ever recorded. The corporate media, NASA, NOAA, IPCC, Hadley CRU bet their reputations on human-caused global warming, and now they're stuck. All they can do is sit there and scream, "It is warming! It is warming! It is warming! Pay no attention to all that snow and ice! It is warming! We're scientists! You must believe us!" No, we don't. Science is not a belief-based system. Science is about facts and reproducibility of results. And what do we get from all the people screaming global warming? Oh, we had to delete the raw data. Just take our word for it. These are our conclusions. We're scientists. We have white lab coats and clipboards and everything. How could you possibly doubt a scientist? By the way, it's now surfacing that George Soros was funding Al Gore's screed about global warming to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. $10 million over 3 years. That's where Al Gore got the money to make his mockumentary. And the goal was carbon taxes on the people, submission to a global environmental authority making decisions about how you live, and behind it all, simple old-fashioned greed. Because the demonization of oil and coal was intended to crush their stock prices so that billionaires like George Soros could snap them up cheap. And then when the global warming fraud was openly admitted to be that, and the reality of a new ice age set in, those stocks would soar, and Soros would be even richer and more of a pain in the neck than he was before the scam. That's what's going on here. Back in 2000, they were insisting snowfalls are a thing of the past. Here we are today. And the corporate media is still out there convinced, apparently, that they can tell you that the world is hotter than it's ever been before, which actually it isn't. It was a lot warmer in 1936. And they've been caught rigging the data. And apparently they're absolutely convinced that they can mesmerize you. They can hypnotize you so that you won't see all the snow and ice and the traffic accidents and the glare ice on the highways and all the power failures from snow and ice bringing the power lines down. You won't see that. The corporate media is out there with their little watch swinging it back and forth. You will not see the snow. You will not see the ice. You will believe the corporate media that 2016 was the hottest year on record. You will pay carbon taxes. Anybody who says there's no such thing as a wide-ranging conspiracy to defraud the general public, we've got one right here, staked out on the ground, naked for you to study and learn from. And this conspiracy involved the U.S. government, NASA, NOAA, the United Nations, the IPCC, Hadley Climate Research Unit over at the University of East Anglia, Penn State, the Met Office in Great Britain, the Met Office in New Zealand. They've been screaming global warming, carbon taxes, since the 1990s. And the reality is there's been no statistical evidence of any warming at all. It's simply being made up out of thin air. NOAA's data for a record warming streak included statistical corrections. Without the statistical corrections, the raw data shows no warming. But that doesn't suit the policy, so we have to statistically correct the data so it shows what we want it to show. When the ClimateGate scandal broke and emails and actual computer code were leaked from inside the Hadley Climate Research Unit, examination of that source code showed the hack. There was literally code in there saying, starting at this year, add so many degrees to the temperature, and for each succeeding year, add so much more. That's where the hockey stick came from. It was manufactured in the computer code. Now, Lord Monkton and his experts have identified a serious, significant error that appears to be in all of these computer models being used by the carbon Nazis. And we have quotes from some of the leading lights of the global warming establishment that we don't need to go and get raw data. We have the computer models. They tell us what we want to see. I mean, what we need to know. And those models are all wrong. So, okay, we're coming up on another commercial break. We got callers waiting on the line. Then we got to talk a little bit about computers and security. I'm getting a lot of emails about my comments about malware bytes. But the downside of the security software is it can be used as a form of censorship. I'm getting emails from people saying they cannot post links to my website at Facebook anymore. Which is why people are leaving Facebook and they're going over to the new up-and-coming alternates, which promise censorship-free environments. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently the House Committee has approved Matisse for Defense Secretary. The president of CNN has just issued a statement that CNN's credibility is higher than ever. Boy, oh boy, talk about delusional. And maybe that's why Trump's White House press secretary is saying that they got to start doing drug tests on these people. All right, we're going to take some phone calls. Terry in Oregon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Just a quick question. Is it possible for Donald Trump to be pro-Israel, but not pro-central bank and not pro-New World Order?
He's definitely not pro-New World Order. I think he's pro-Israel because his image of Israel and Palestine is what he got from corporate media. And my sense is that once he starts directly dealing with the actual government of Israel, his enthusiasm is definitely going to wane.
I hope you're right, Mike, and thanks for the comments. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And let's be clear here, okay? There's a lot of things Trump is talking about that I don't agree with, okay? But I still maintain that Trump, at his absolute worst, is still better for the United States than Hillary Clinton at her best. So we're just going to have to, just work on the issues that divide us and come together. All right, let's see. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Got in a little late to the show. I had a lucky streak over at the crap table, so sorry about that. Wanted to ask you, Mike, Jim Fetzer made a comment. I totally agreed with it. He said, Trump has done more for this country before even being elected than any of the previous presidents. I mean, in recent memory, in terms of his renegotiation with Boeing, and I believe on the F-35, his bringing these manufacturing jobs, not many, but at least he's brought some manufacturing jobs back to the country and has not offshored those jobs. So I agree with Fetzer. He's done more than in recent memory than these other presidents have done in office, and he hasn't even become president yet. So.
Well, yeah, and we're hearing all kinds of job projections, but again, it's an uphill fight because the reality is, behind the lies of U.S. unemployment, there are over 90 million Americans who need a job, and creating 1,000 jobs here and 1,000 jobs there is good for the headlines, and it's a good start, but there is definitely a long, long way to go.
Mike, I agree with you. I think we're going to have, this economic collapse has been predicted over the past, 5 years. But I'm pretty sure once Trump gets into office, the plunge protection team is going to disappear. I think the market's going to collapse. They're all going to blame it on Trump, as you've been saying.
Yes.
And all these other statistics have been ignored these past 8 years. The 95 million people who've left the job force, the made-up unemployment numbers. But, the corporate media, they're going to just pin the blame on Donald Trump and say, we had a great economy.
Yeah.
Obama was.
Yeah, but nobody's going to be listening to the corporate media anymore. For the president of CNN to come on out there and make such an absurd statement. I agree. Yeah,
I agree. Mike, Trump's tweet from a few days ago that was directed against Brennan, where he said it was fake news. I agreed with that part, but then, Trump started talking about red line in Syria, Ukraine and Crimea. What is he talking about? That's what gets me upset. It just seems like he has no coherence to his foreign policy pronouncements. Red line means what, Donald? Assad didn't use those chemical weapons. He's basically implying that, nobody respects Obama. Obama set this red line, and Brennan as well, and Assad trampled on it.
All right, well, I know all that. We still need to be very careful about what we're being told that Trump has actually said. If we don't get it directly from him, if we don't get it directly from his Twitter feed or so forth, we have to be very careful because we know the corporate media is spinning and twisting and trying to selectively edit things. And, Trump campaigned saying there are going to be no more foreign interventions. And again, let's give him his first 100 days. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, Bob. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Mateus in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I'm starting to sound like you now. I think I must have caught your cold watching you.
You probably got it from Jim Goddard because he had it too.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'd like to recommend that you brand a title name for the episode with Claire on Fridays.
Yes.
I'd like to recommend the name. The Clarification Report.
That's a good one. And we've actually kind of used
cute?
Yeah, we've used it as a private joke many times here. So yeah, well, that'll now become that'll become the official name of Claire's segment on Friday.
And then I was also thinking that maybe you could consider like having her on for longer, or maybe even giving her the hot seat if you can't afford more time. Especially since it's near the end of the show where you've like finished up with all the kind of day-specific material. But in there, I've got a list of like 8 things. Let's see how many we can get through before you get tired of me.
Okay.
Okay, marinating food, it also applies to your body parts. So if you're using like chemical shampoos and chemical soaps for decades, you're actually marinating your body with chemicals. That's why it's a really good idea to just use all chemical-free.
No question.
The next one is, okay, now, is it racist of me? Like, I don't feel comfortable about the fact that our new liberal government installed a man who's in charge of our defense who's wearing a turban. Like, that just seems wrong. Is that just, what do you think? Is that understandable I feel that way, or is that just sound racist, or what?
Well, I don't know about racist. I can imagine a lot of people would have a concern about that, in that we are all hoping that we have leaders in this country who are Americans. And, of course, the turbans may signal just a religious difference, and our Constitution says we can't actually make any rules that discriminate on the basis of a religion.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few problems with that. But anyway, the next one is both Blitzer and Rachel Maddow. Whenever you see them on a Hollywood movie where they're playing a role on some fictitious plot, they look exactly like they do when they're doing the regular shows, which just proves how fake they are consistently.
Yeah, I noticed that started happening, a few years back in the movies. And I know that obviously they're going to get paid to be in the movie, they're going to get residuals, and it represents a major source of income. But I think they did themselves a disservice by doing so, by blurring that line between what is supposed to be the real news and the fake reporting that was being seen in the movies. But from their point of view, since it's all fake anyway, I guess it was acceptable behavior.
Yeah. And then regarding that mediocre Negro guy, Hill, he lambasted Trump for using stars and star power. But how hypocritical, because that's all the liberals do. Like, Trump is doing 1% as much, and they have the nerve to come out and attack him for it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, when you look at how many Hollywood celebrities and music stars and everything were out there shilling for Hillary Clinton. But again, double standards and hypocrisy, that's apparently part of the acceptable toolkit. You know, it's like...
Yeah, and projection also.
Yeah, projection definitely would fit in there as well.
The potential Trump tapes that we're hearing about, I think that if they had it, they would have used it 24 to 48 hours before the election, when that actually could have maybe helped prevent Trump from becoming the president. It's much less potentially effective now, if it exists, to use it now. He's already the president. It's much harder to stop him from being the president now. So I don't think it's true. And then I want to comment on your comment about this from yesterday. You said, be careful, they might have some software from the corporate media that can make the face look like a fake face. Well, I'd like to take that one step further, and I think that we have to think about top secret military grade technology. The whole system is freaked out right now. They'll pull out all the best technology.
Yeah, they will. Now, the software I'm talking about, it was a demonstration where they could take a video of a real individual, and then they would have an actor with tracking on their face saying whatever lines they wanted to say, and the software would morph the mouth and face of the real person to make it look like they were saying those words. And it was an early demonstration. The video is actually a few years old. I'm sure it's been refined since then, and I'm certain that the CIA's probably grabbed hold of it as well. There was some years ago where the MIT Media Lab produced some software that could make any one individual's voice sound like anybody else. And that could be used to do all kinds of fakery as well. The one thing the software couldn't duplicate, though, was the cadences and speech patterns of the original. So even though it would sound like this person's voice, they wouldn't be talking the way that person talked, unless the person who was doing the speaking had been schooled to try and duplicate that other person accurately, like a professional impersonator, like a Frank Gorshin or somebody.
Which they would have. They would use that person.
Yeah.
And the military likes to stay a certain amount of years, a handful of years ahead of us, technologically speaking.
Yes.
So I bet you they've got something that's like 10 years ahead, that's totally convincing. If they put out a tape, we got to be suspicious of it.
We do. Now, there's already one tape that's been floating around that appears to show Donald Trump in a bed in a compromising situation, but it came on out that they basically borrowed a figure of Donald Trump from a wax museum, and that's what was actually in the bed. But the reality is, at this point, we have to understand, the other side loves to play dirty. They think it's their divine right, and we just need to start out on the assumption, you know, you prove what you're saying. It's not up to us to prove that you're lying. You've lied to us so many times. The burden of proof is on you. And I think this comment by the president of CNN that their credibility has never been higher is a sign of just how desperate they are, that they realize their credibility is in trouble. Frankly, if their credibility has always been zero, then technically he's correct. But it really is an attempt to regain the high ground. And one of the alarming things I'm seeing the corporate media doing is they're all running around just presuming that they should be the arbiters of what is real and fake news. Whether it's Facebook or all these other companies, they're saying, we'll sort it out for you. No, you won't. You're the guilty parties. You were the one who were feeding us the lies, and we're not going to let you decide you know, for us what's going on. And they're getting so desperate. As one example, Slate is now offering a free fake news tool. If you click on the link, it downloads an extension for Chrome browsers that will automatically flash when you're reading an article that Slate has decided is fake news.
Well, what the CNN president meant is that he's never been hired smoking his own propaganda dope.
Yeah, that's definitely it. And that's why the White House press secretary is talking about drug tests on those people. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, totally. So, hey, it's two more things. It's illegal to modify a dollar bill. Why is it not illegal to modify an official American flag, especially the ones that are sitting behind the presidential addresses and everything? How they have these, like, borders of gold and then these big tassels? Like, shouldn't that be illegal? Like, isn't that considered, like, defacing the flag?
No, because there are different forms of the flag. And the one with the gold fringe and the tassels, I think, basically signals a maritime flag. That's
not the American flag.
Well, there are several American flags, and what most people don't understand is the United States actually has a flag for wartime and a flag for peace. But they've never used the peace flag, and that's why everybody thinks the stars and stripes is the flag. It isn't. It's the United States war flag, and there's a peace flag where the red and white stripes are actually vertical, and the stars are blue stars on a white field.
Okay, so this is your flag. It's not a total New World Order invasion flag. It is your flag.
No, it isn't. The gold fringe and tassels goes back a long, long way, and I think it signals that you're basically dealing with maritime law. But it's just used as an impressive decoration. It's just a set piece those concerns.
Okay, well, that's good, because I get mad every time I see it. That's good. Last thing, the Liberals are pretending to be afraid that Trump will be bad for minorities, but the truth is that they're secretly afraid he'll be good for them, which will destroy the Liberal brand forever.
You're absolutely right. And that's why we're seeing like this black singer who was going to perform at Trump's inauguration received death threats, and she's had to pull on out because the liberals are afraid that Trump is going to basically be Donald Trump and just prove to the world that he was never any of these things that he was accused of being by the liberals, that he's not a sexist, that he's not a racist, that he certainly isn't gallivanting around hotel rooms in Moscow with prostitutes, and that liberal sales pitch of victimhood is definitely threatened by a Trump presidency, especially when you look at Ivanka, who's a very beautiful but successful woman. That undermines that whole feminist idea that the reason you're not a success as a woman is those evil, straight white males. And it really is starting to come apart. And the liberals are going to attack anything that is a threat to this carefully crafted illusion of victimhood that they've been selling to women, to blacks, to Hispanics, to the gays.
Yeah, it's going to rock their world when they find out how good it's actually going to be. I think Trump's going to use his ego for self-satisfaction by being a hero. He wants to go down in history as the hero.
Yes.
He doesn't need the money. He's got the money. He doesn't need the fame. He's got the fame. He wants to be the hero. I'm convinced of that. He's going to just completely be, like, so famous for hundreds of years. Like, it's going to be a complete pivot. And then when he cleans up the election system, it's going to be hard for fake elections to throw him out after 4 years. So he'll stay in for 8 years. And then after 8 years of straightening things out, it's going to be hard for someone else to turn. This could be an entire renaissance, like a new world pivot here of back to like a golden age of expansion.
That's what we're working to. But again, anybody who thinks Trump being in the White House is going to change anything just because Trump is in the White House, you're delusional. Donald Trump's election opens the door to change, but we, the American people, are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump against that obstructionist Congress and an openly hostile corporate media. And we're going to have to basically back them down. Our work did not end with Trump's election. It's only just now beginning.
Definitely. Well, thank you for letting me go through my list, and sorry to any other callers I'm holding up. I'll let you go. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, we were talking about computers and computer hacking. There is a new Gmail phishing attack, and it is so subtle, it's even tricking some of the most careful of users. And according to WordPress security plugin creator WordFence, the way the attack works is that hackers will send emails to the contacts of compromised accounts, meaning the email appears to come from somebody that you know, and it contains a seemingly innocuous attachment. When you click the attachment, a new tab opens in the browser that looks almost identical to the Google sign-in page. But if you sign into that page, the information goes straight to the attacker. So you do have to be careful. And again, you have to wonder, why isn't the government concerned about all this? Is the government the hackers, the cyber criminals, the ransomware writers? I mean, if I were in a position of authority, I would be looking at all these ransomware attacks as an act of war. Certainly it's an act of economic warfare and cyber warfare. And we've been hearing for months how the U.S. government views any cyber warfare attack as an act of war. These ransomware writers are waging war on the American people. They're hitting hospitals, they're hitting schools, they're hitting individuals. And we have this government that loves to talk tough about cyber war with Russia, just seeming to sit back and not give a darn about a very obvious threat to the nation and its economy. One must wonder why. Now then, NASA apparently finally deciding that they too have had enough of this global warming nonsense. They're sending a satellite to the surface of this asteroid. It's about the size of the state of Massachusetts. And they think from remote observations It's completely made of metal. They're saying that it is probably this nickel iron ore, which if it could be mined and brought back to Earth in tiny amounts, you can't drop the entire thing onto the Earth or you'll extinct the entire planet. But it could be worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And there is definitely something that needs to be looked at. There's a lot of incredible mineral wealth out there in those asteroids. Now, once you're out of the gravity well of Earth, getting around the solar system is actually pretty trivial, especially for robotic spacecraft that can afford to take a year or 2 years to get on out there. But we could be mining the asteroids for metals. We could be mining the upper layers of the gas giant planets for all the hydrocarbons we could ever possibly need. There's a huge amount of wealth out there. Now's the time to actually start saying, yeah, let's start commercializing the solar system. Now, what is really missing, what NASA needs to be developing, is a very inexpensive way to get into Earth orbit. Because that's the hurdle right there. Once you're out in orbit, getting around the solar system is fairly easy. Getting things back to Earth, fairly easy. Solar sails, that new drive that NASA just came up with. Getting that stuff back down onto the Earth, we may have to literally set up a location on Earth that is a landing zone for things, where we can drop these big chunks of nickel iron and then go on out, carve them up, and take them to the smelting plants. It's technologically doable. It's economically feasible. It might be time to make that leap. I wish Trump had made me head of NASA. I may have killed it when I joked about ordering the ground crews to dress up like apes when the astronauts came on back. But I would really like to see us renew our push into space. Renew our push to confirm indigenous life on Mars or Titan, because that would be a socially transformative event for all of mankind. Personally, I think we already did it on Viking, but that's just my opinion at this point. All right, we got to take one more commercial break. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently, yet another species of honeybee has been added to the endangered species list. And certainly Monsanto loves this, because if there are no bees to pollinate natural crops, then farmers are forced to buy the GMO seeds. And maybe Monsanto's business plan to monopolize and control food production on planet Earth included the destruction of the bee population, specifically so that natural pollination couldn't take place. Now, remember how the FDA likes to claim that they are keeping an eye on products to make sure that you are only eating safe food and using safe medications. And they don't really. The FDA kind of acts more like advertising for these corporations. And apparently the FDA has just approved a new GMO pineapple without any independent safety testing. The FDA has declared it as substantial equivalent, meaning it's so close to the real natural pineapple, we don't feel that there needs to be any kind of safety testing. And so they've blessed it. They've just given this new GMO pineapple a rubber stamp. Now, if you want to avoid it, it's really easy, because this pineapple, which is now approved, is pink. It's a pink pineapple. And I'm sure people are going to say, ooh, it's cool, it's a pink pineapple, I want to try that. I wouldn't. They're just being really, really too reckless. Another story here, just put up from Natural News here. Apparently there's a doctor, Dr. Daniel Needus. He's a family doctor and the director of the Cleveland Clinic Wellness Institute. And he published a blog post basically saying we do need to be concerned about toxic ingredients in vaccines that there do seem to be links with neurological diseases. Now, he didn't take a hard line saying no vaccines. He simply said there are some vaccines that may not be necessary, and other vaccines ought to be spaced out more widely. And the corporate media just came in on him and basically harassed the Cleveland Clinic until it agreed to discipline the doctor and silence him. Now, if you look at the documentary Vaxxed, one of the big issues in there was the pushing of the triple vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR. Now, you can get those vaccines as single shots spaced out over weeks. And a lot of parents wanted to do that because a lot of the autism and other problems seem to center on that triple shot vaccination. And what happened was the companies simply stopped making the single shot vaccines so that you didn't have a choice anymore. You're required by law to get the MMR, and the triple shot is the only thing you can get. And it's causing harm. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here. Get something useful done with the rest of the day. Rest my voice. We'll be back tomorrow here on Republic Broadcasting. Aloha, America.